Hi and welcome to the shed. Now the job for the moment that I need to get on with is digging in with the Sportster. The engine's going to be off for a few months before I get a chance to rebuild it, so there's work I need to do on the motor. There's other bits and pieces that need doing on the bike, and with the engine apart, really this is the time to actually get on with them and actually do them, get them done and out of the way. Because the problem is, if I put this engine back in this bike, then what's going to happen is that all those jobs that really could need doing aren't going to get done. And there's bits and pieces, like there's some rust on the frame that really needs to be dealt with here and now. I'm a bit reluctant because it's a big job, but one of the obvious things to do would be to take the bike apart, repowder coat the frame and deal with the rust once and for all. There's nothing significant, there's nothing structural with the rust, but if I leave it, then it could become so it needs to be dealt with. Then there are the forks. I've been waiting to rebuild the forks for years, I mean literally years. One of the issues and one of the reasons I haven't done it, well, there's two reasons. One is because I need to make some special tools to take the forks apart. Not really a good reason. Second reason, and the more serious reason, is the fact that forks are pitted. And there's no point putting new seals on pitted forks. The problem is that these forks aren't your standard Sportster forks. They're a more specialised unit. They're a Showa fork. Now, I don't believe that Showa only made these forks for Harley. They must have made them for other bikes, but I don't know which ones, and I guess it is possible they only made them for Harley. So the solution then is the problem. Okay, the problem, before we come to the solution, is that you can occasionally find these forks on eBay, but you have to ask yourself, these are 20-year-old forks, more or less, because I only made them for that production run of about 97 to 2003. What condition are they in? Are they pitted? There's not really much point spending a lot of money to buy a pair of used forks only to find that the stanchions are bent or pitted. So they're going to come off, they're going to come apart, and the stanchions are going to get re-chromed. It's the right answer, and again, this is the time to do it. And again, the more parts I take off the bike, like the forks, the closer I am to a full strip down. The only thing that's holding me back is that I don't really want to pull the engine out of the frame. And the reason I don't want to pull the engine out of the frame is that this is a Harley, it's not a Japanese bike. It won't just bolt straight back in there. You do have to take a bit of care, if you're doing it properly, to get it aligned correctly. As I say, it's a job I'm not really wanting to do, but I don't think I can avoid it. On the upside, it means the oil tank is coming off, which means it can get done as well. Cheers, Mackie. And maybe you can do my other tank. Now, hate watching skilled people working, because it just makes your head explode with ideas about what you could do and how you could use that and so forth. Anyway, so job for today is to start stripping out the forks. I've just taken the carburetor off. Now I need to dig in and start just unbolting all the stuff that surrounds the forks, ready to actually pull them apart and get them fixed. So let's dig into this. Okay, so here is the bike as it stands. So as you can see, the heads are off, seat units off, all the mud guards are actually stripped off the bike now. So it's looking fairly bare, obviously the tank out as well. So this really is the time, as I say, to actually think about getting this bike right back down and reworking it. Right, so let's start with a fork brace. let's pull the calipers off. There we go. Back in. Yeah, this needs a pinch bar. Spacer, so next wheel spacer. Now put it back on, put that back on in the same way around. You can see which way around it was here, but we need to clean this up before we put it back on. Next wheel spacer. Now put it back on, put that back on in the same way around. You can see which way around it was here, but we need to clean this up before we put it back on. So, in case that wasn't visible, so put your spacers back on in the order they came off. Now, we'll put this back into the wheel in a moment. My axle back in. But it won't fall out completely. Keeping the orientation, so that goes into the bearing there. We can check these all later. So the next stage then is to drop the forks down, but before we actually remove the fork legs, what we want to do is to loosen up two things. We want to loosen up this top nut here, and we want to loosen up a nut in the bottom of the in the fork legs. Now this one here, you can't get a socket on it because the handlebars are in the way. Now obviously you've got two choices. You can either take the handlebars off, which I'm going to do anyway, but normally you don't need to, so generally speaking you wouldn't do that. What you'll do is you remove these, loosen off these two Torx nuts and move the fork leg down until the top part here is just sitting here. Retighten this and then you can get onto it and loosen it off. But first, let's get down and do the one on the bottom. Up in the bottom of the fork legs, there is the head of an Allen bolt, and you will need a long, we've got two choices. You'll either need a long socket to get up in there, or you can use an 8mm Allen wrench, cut it off and use an 8mm spanner, which is effectively all this is. This is just an 8mm socket. This is just an 8mm socket with an Allen fixed into it. So, but make sure that's really firmly in there, because that's only a shallow nut in there. So as I say, make sure you've got it really, really firmly in there. To be honest, this one, there we go. You might need to put the axle back in to actually keep the tension there, and you will need to remove this to get up there. Why 8mm, you might be thinking? Well, same reason this nut takes a 14mm spanner, because these are Showa forks, they're Japanese and they're metric. Bear in mind, once you've loosened this bolt, it will tend to drip a bit of oil, so you might want to just nip it back up a little bit, just so it stays oil tight. As I say, get that in there really firmly, and if necessary put the axle back in. Looks like I might need to with this one. So I'm going to need a little bit of leverage. Just to crack that off. As I say, then just nip it up again. These have got quite a high torque rating on them. I'm just going to have to move these out of the way. So with the torques, make sure they're really firmly pressed in there. Always feels like you're stripping these out. I really hate it. As I say, they do have quite a high torques value, and of course you might find that someone has thread locked them into place. Now you can see from doing this that this fork leg has already started to drop, so just help it on its way. Now I'm not going to drop it too far, because then the headlight is going to start to get in the way. So just drop to there. And just clamp up. Obviously it doesn't have to be especially torqued, has to be tight enough to hold this, but that's it. Now here's the moment of truth. It will fit. 35mm socket. It's a little bit loose. Can't say I'm terribly happy about that, but it measured at 35, so let's give it a go. Right, now I'm going to be pushing this way, so I've got the fork against the other fork lock, fork stop. Let's get everything out the way so that, there we go. Ow, shit. That was tight. Ow. Thumb was right in the way there. And again, don't need to take these off, just enough to loosen them. Yeah, didn't do any damage to the nut there. Don't forget, this is going to want to fall off or fall out when we loosen this, so keep a grip on it. 2 hands I recommend. It won't necessarily drop out straight away because it's actually twisting inside this clamp here, so if you push it out the bottom a little bit, it will wiggle out, and they are quite heavy. So when I got this stripped apart, this is going to have to be dealt with, because this is rusty, and the rust comes all the way down here, which is well within the normal range of motion of the fork seals. And if we just put new fork seals in here, this pitting would just rip the new fork seals apart, and the forks would leak, so it's completely pointless. The other issue is that sometimes forks like these are bent. Very often they're bent just from general riding. Previous owner might have driven into something, not stopped in time, all that sort of stuff. They're just hitting potholes and speed ramps and this sort of stuff causes flexion, causes damage, causes them to bend. So the engineering shop will deal with this pitting and they will straighten the fork legs. It's a shame I can't go out and just buy a new set of stanchions, but I don't know what other bike was fitted with these fork legs. I mean, it's a Showa fork, so the chances are it's a common stanchion, if only you knew what it fitted. I don't know, maybe even a standard forks to fork leg stanchion would be the right one. I have no idea. But for now, what we need to do is take them apart. So I'm going to take the other leg out and then let's get it apart. Right, so that's the first stage of the fork rebuild complete, which is good news. Next stage is the disassembly. Now for that, first need to empty the oil out, and then I need to make up some special tools, which is part of the reason I'm cutting it off here, because it can take me a little bit of time to actually make the tools. Then we'll get them apart, and then we'll see where we go from there. Thanks very much for watching, and I will catch you guys again next time.